All right, back-to-back week with your favorite Damage Plan MMA podcast guests, Jason Laporte, Zach Partridge. Great to have you back for this award show. We're capping off 2023 once again, and this time we're going through some of the top moments throughout the entire year, but specifically, we're going to go category by category. We've been having these lists year-round. We've been posting them on our socials. People love them in the comments and things like that, but Zach, we're going to kick things off. Knockout of the year. This is by far the tightest group of any of them. Jerome Hatch over Daniel Stewart, Ricky Mamone over Kyle Brown, Harris Hawkins over Gus Quintana, Nasir Davis over Brendan Myers, Viliami Kulu, Kat Pantea, and then, Viliami Kulu over Anthony Acosta. And then on top of that, Kat Pantea over Derek Jorgensen. Jason, we were talking about this a couple minutes ago. This is a very, very difficult list.
Yeah, this one was tough, and I went a little different with Zach on this one. I went with Kat Pantea's head kick knockout, since that seemed to be the theme for Utah and Salt Lake City with all the head kick knockouts that we've had. So I went with Kat on that one. I don't think you can go wrong with any guy on that list. But yeah, I went with Kat on that one for my KO of the year.
Yeah, Kat Pantea did end up getting our KO of the year. But Zach, I know you did also think that Nasir Davis was in there as well.
How does a knockout for a title not like it was for a title? So it was like the most significant.
Head kick city.
Uppercut City. That was, I mean,
it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
That was
it was beautiful.
So we're like splitting hairs, right? Like they're all phenomenal knockouts. I think you can make a strong argument for Jerome sleeping Daniel Stewart as well. So I'm going like difficulty here, right? If you catch somebody clean with a kick, most likely they're going out. But I think with a punch, it just takes a little more precision. Right? Yeah. Maybe? I don't know.
Do we see more head kick knockouts, or do we see more punches from
I don't know. Head kick city apparently just happens all the time.
I bet you there's more punches knockouts on this list than there is head kicks.
I really, what it came down to, that was the one on the list that was for a title. That's why I gave that one the nod. They're all phenomenal. I mean, again, splitting hairs, teach their own. There's an argument for all of them. I'm just going to go for the one that won him a belt.
You could make a strong argument, like Blake said, on the Jerome Hatch one. That picture of him with his arms out after he knocked out Daniel, that picture is epic.
Moment of the year could have been
moment of the year.
And we were waiting for Jerome. Everybody knows about Jerome's power, for him to in the rematch with that fight, and the way he kind of baited Daniel Stewart at weigh-ins. He told him, he goes, I bet you're going to just, I can't remember what he said, or maybe I just won't repeat what he said, what he told him at weigh-ins, but pretty much just said he was going to, sniff his crotch and wrestle him. And he goaded Daniel Stewart into standing and striking with him. And he retired Daniel Stewart with that punch. So for me, that might've been a close second, but again, I'll give the nod to the one that put a belt on somebody.
I believe it was, you're going to get me on the ground and F me. Great words from So, all right, submission of the year. We've got Spencer Woodland with his Peruvian necktie, Melody Schrock over Beth Silva, Hector Lopez getting the win over Adam Frank, and on top of that, Brendan Myers as well over Tony Garcia. And the 2-1s, I mean, the winner of it is going to be Melody Schrock over Beth Silva with 1 second to go. A split decision loss would have been the subsequent result. However, she does get it done in the final second of the fight. The runner-up being Spencer Woodland. Both of them were special, but Zach, I know that Melody Schrock one was certainly a vote in your book.
Yeah, to me, again, splitting hairs. So I went with the one that she was going to lose the fight. If 2 more seconds passes by, the fight's over and she loses a split decision. So that's why I chose Melody Schrock. But I think my runner-up had to have been Hector Lopez over Adam, because Adam is a jiu-jitsu phenom. That's what he does, is jiu-jitsu tournaments. And I just remember going, when Adam took Hector's back, I just remember going, that's probably the beginning of the end. And I'm somebody, I had a lot of faith in Hector going into that fight. And I know he was probably an underdog on paper. And I told people, I'm like, I think people are sleeping on Hector. But when Adam got to his back and as easily as he did, I was like, oh, that's going to be a tough. And not only does he get out of it, he gets the sub himself. So they're like 1A, 1B for me.
Jason, on top of that, Spencer Woodland getting creative with that Peruvian necktie.
Oh, but it's a Peruvian freaking
yeah, I went with creativity on that one. That's why I went with Spencer Woodland. But for me, I think if people know, like Zach said, how highly touted Adam was in that Hector Lopez fight, and I'm with Zach on this one. I told everybody, we both were telling everybody, do not sleep on Hector Lopez. I remember Zach telling me when he called Anthony Lovato and asked him about this fight, and he said, "No, we want this fight. Like we'll be ready." Like they knew Hector was going to be ready, and I mean, I think if people knew how highly touted Adam was, Hector would be up there, but I just went with your creativity. Once again, you're splitting hairs, man. How can you hate somebody that submits somebody with a second left and they were losing the fight? That, like I said, I just went with creativity, but once again, we're splitting hairs.
And let's also not forget Melody Schrock was a blue belt, I believe, a competing purple belt, but a blue belt at the time. I believe she's gotten her purple belt at this point. Beth Silva, a brown belt in her own right, been training her entire life. It was her debut, but she's been competing the entirety of her life too. Both were slick submission artists, but Melody Schrock getting submission of the year. On top of that, top 5 performances of this year, and this was another really, really tight category. We got Julian Ruiz getting the win over Cody Hammond. Mike Jones getting the win over Jerome Hatch, Jackson DeGray versus Ben McNeil, Ryder Campo versus Cross Hughes, and Amy Moreno over Mina Yushirawadi. The winner is going to be Jackson DeGray getting the win over Ben McNeil back in September. The runner-up is going to be Mike Jones facing off against Jerome Hatch. Zach, your thoughts on these two fights? I mean, they were both unbelievable, but Jackson DeGray just really separated himself from the rest of the pack, it seemed like.
There was just something about that performance that I don't know why. Because like on paper, it's like Amy Moreno was phenomenal. Ryder Campo was phenomenal. Mike Jones, main event title fight, phenomenal. There was just something about that performance that Jackson DeGray had that night that it was just like, to me, it was the absolute cleanest. Like nobody's perfect. And I'm sure you can go through that fight and say Jackson, but for how long that fight it lasted and how borderline perfect he was for all 2.5 rounds that it lasted or whatever, he was the best for the longest out of those.
Yeah,
and got the finish. Like even Julian Ruiz will tell you, as awesome as that performance was, he's pissed he didn't get the finish. If he gets a finish in the 3rd round, that would have been, to me, that would have been it. But for Jackson to look as good as he did for 2.5 rounds and then get the finish, to me, it's just Jackson.
I mean, Jason, the gas tank on Jackson as well was unbelievable. I mean, he kept coming forward, 100% output the entirety of the fight.
Yeah, and it was like he saw everything in slow motion. He knew everything Ben was going to throw before he even threw it. He was moving. There's a certain swagger about Jackson DeGray right now, and we saw it after he just won that title. He's got a certain swagger about him right now, and he's riding high. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's next with Mr. DeGray.
Cannot wait for the band.
And Amy Moreno's performance against Mina was, I mean, Mina's been on a tear lately. I hate picking Amy because Mina was my coach before. No hate on Amy, but that was a phenomenal performance by Amy Moreno as well.
On top of that, I mean, Ryder Campo looked so good. Mike Jones, again, the runner-up, he just looked elusive in there. It just looked like it was his fight to win. And I know that there were talks, like you said last week, Zach, you talked about Mike Jones not really being able to come up in the biggest moments. But in that huge moment in his career, he puts on the best performance of his entire career.
And the best of my favorite was that it was standing and Jeremy Horn was like, Jason interviewing Mike, that what an incredible performance. And Jeremy Horn goes, no, it wasn't. I love Coach Horn. Only Coach Horn could not be happy with the performance of 1st round knockout where I love it. But it's just because Mike didn't stick to the game plan and he kind of just got wild in there. But man, this is a results-based business.
I spoke with him after that fight, and if I remember right, I mentioned on the broadcast that I thought he looked a little nervous coming in the cage. And he told me after the fight, I said, man, I thought you looked nervous. He said he worked so hard to keep himself calm and just be in the moment and not just run out there like a madman berserker, and he was just controlling all those emotions, and you just saw it just erupt after that knockout. Like, damn, like that was just once again a great performance by Mike Jones.
Love Coach Horn. Shout out Coach Horn. Love you.
A sport built off of high moments, and on top of that, the most emotional moments obviously come from comebacks. Carson Hardman getting a nomination, as well as Melody Schrock, Teague Vigil, Cam Chisholm, some huge comebacks throughout the entirety of this year. But the winner is going to go to Teague Vigil, who had to face off against Raymond Lawley, who again was number 2 in the state of Idaho coming into that fight as he made that jump up to pro. Teague Vigil 0-4. It looked like his back was against the wall. Jason, obviously we don't do betting lines on these regional shows, but if we did, I think Teague would have been a heavy underdog headed into that one.
Oh, he's plus 300 in that fight, and people are giving him no shot. 0-4. I'm saying people, not me, because when he was walking to the cage, I said he is going to be a handful for Raymond Lawley, and don't sleep on him. And I could not have been prouder. I mean, to see a guy that I've watched all of his, his 4 pro fights. I've watched him lose. I've watched him be competitive. I've called his fights. He pours his heart out into every fight, and to see him get that victory, just that highlights my year for me.
I mean, the reason why he wins comeback, because he wasn't just coming back in that fight. He's coming back 0-4, coming back in that fight. You want to talk about a guy, you want to talk about mental toughness. I think most people break.
100%.
I just think most people break. And when somebody has that self-belief in it, I mean, Carson's for a belt was unbelievable, but to me, that was more than just a comeback in that fight. He gets the comeback award because, 0-4, gets dropped, literally in the same position how he loses. He's lost all of his previous fights, getting his back taken, collects himself calm, wrestles, lands the knee, gets the knockout of his own. That was the comeback of the year.
It was a special one. That one got a clean sweep, but I will say if there is a runner-up, I've got to say it's probably Carson Hardman, Babaji Chaudhary. I mean, he looked dead to rights finished in that first round, going into the second, answers the bell in the second round, and just puts on an unbelievable comeback. We were losing our lids over in the broadcast.
Babajit's arm at the end of the first.
I think what pushed Teague over the edge, for at least for me, was we've seen Carson in those moments before, and he always does it. He always comes. It's not nothing new.
It's like
we've seen him a million times. We expect Carson to just come back and just knock somebody out.
Heart of a champion for sure. That was an incredible performance in its own right. All right, we're going to move over to events of the year. This one gets another clean sweep from us. Nominations: November, August, June, April, and January. January, we talked about it last week. Definitely getting the clean sweep for us. Just an unbelievable night. I mean, Ben Moa, Jerome Hatch, Viliami Kulu, Kent Mafaleo capping off the night. I mean, there were so many moments, but Zach, seriously, that was the best card of the year. I think November was a close second, though.
I agree. For me, I'm biased, but Team Moa, having been maybe who knows, but retire from MMA, not bare knuckle. But have that moment at Fierce and his epic walkout that you covered awesome on your podcast with him. That it just like the whole night was awesome. Kent, his kind of crowning moment, becoming the guy in Utah. That was the card for me. It wasn't even close. Like all year, everybody was like, "Oh, maybe this is the card of the year." I'm like, still January all year.
Yeah, that June Mountain America Center was stacked. But I got to go back and just kind of echo what Zach said. Having been at the Maverick Center, me screwing up on the mic and calling him Kent, which I don't think he minds now because Kent's been on a tear, but I called him Kent on the mic when I was interviewing. That was just one of those cards where we had the who's who of Utah MMA on that card, and it kind of set the tone for Fierce Fighting Championship and really just kind of put us on the map, and we're just kind of continuing to just pick up steam from there.
Zach, you spend more time with him, but I just interviewed him a couple of weeks ago. I think it's safe to say that people are prone to mess up something when talking to Ben Moa because he's a little intimidating, just in general. I mean, just talking to Ben Moa.
Intimidated by Ben?
A little bit.
He's a big teddy bear, bro.
He is a nice guy. He is a very, very nice guy. But I will say, Jason, I just want to remind you, I literally don't even remember that happening. So
I'm surprised you don't. I'm
either.
surprised you don't. I remembered because I was like, oh my, he just kind of looked at me. I'm like, oh, I'm about ready to get choked. I'm ready to get choked out.
Man, your head's on a swivel the entire time on that broadcast.
Yeah.
You forget pretty much everything. All right, guys, before we keep going, we got to talk a little bit about our podcast sponsor, Water and Wellness. Now, you've heard us talk about water and wellness before, but I got to tell you, this is the best water I have ever had in my entire life. Alkaline, filtered, some of the tastiest stuff you'll ever have. I crave it like it's a cheap meal in itself, but it is so good for you. And they're stationed right here in Salt Lake City. So go ahead, head over to Water and Wellness for the best water you have ever had in your life. Change your water, change your life. Let's get back to the podcast. Fight of the year. This is another clean sweep. We've got Hardman versus Choudhury, Collard versus Steyerwalt, Andrew Mickelson versus Chris Chu, and Tyler Call versus Landon Dodge, but it does get the clean sweep. Kesley Collard, Steven Steyerwalt. Jason, we've been saying it the entire year. This is the fight of the year. I remember calling this, and we could just not believe the amount of output and the amount of power behind every single shot that wouldn't waver either of those two fighters.
Yeah, both those guys were trading shots from the first to the last bell. What I specifically remember about that fight, what really stood out to me is Joel fought both of those guys, and he finishes Kesley with leg kicks, and he finishes Steyerwalt with a body shot. You saw Steyerwalt kicking Kesley's leg, and you saw Kesley going to the body of Steyerwalt. It's like both of those guys did their homework. They're both just cracking each other. I mean, it was an epic fight all year long. And Chris Chu, Andrew Mickelson was a very close second for me, too.
That one was an absolute brawl. Zach, your thoughts on the nominations, but also Collard versus Steyerwalt getting the win.
I thought this was probably the easiest one for me, like clear cut. Because like Chris and Andrew was really fun, but I thought it was also damage wise, it was fairly one sided. Chris was just really tough. Same with, Cody Hammond, Julian, or whatever. Baba G, it was like one-sided the first round, and then, the comeback and stuff. But like, you want to talk about back and forth for 3 rounds, split decision. I kind of thought that Kesley might have got his hand raised. You guys kind of thought that Steyerwalt was going to get his hand raised. Sitting next to Cody Bunderson, who thought, like we kind of all like it was just that close and just that good. And one thing that's really fun, now it's like, and now, Kesley's fought again since then, and some other really fun fights with Thomas Prestridge in June. And then just had a really fun fight with Nate Owens. And then, Steven Steyerwalt's coming back for us. I think we're just about to get that under contract in 2024. And, Kesley, I'm sure will be back soon. Like that was my fight of the year, like hands down, no and ifs or buts, back and forth. I'd watch those two fight. I'd rebook them 5 more times against each other.
I just remember
sorry.
No, go ahead.
You couldn't have been. I mean, if Kesley would have got his hand raised, nobody is complaining. Nobody. It was, if I remember right, split decision, right?
Split decision.
Yeah.
Split decision. Like, I mean, there's no loser in that fight. Like, no loser.
No, I just remember it was such a raw emotion from Kesley too. He really wanted to get that win, and he fell to his knees when he heard the actual decision because it was just so razor close. This year we had, if I have my notes up in front of me, we had 48 debuts this year, 7 pro, 41 amateur, some big time debuts. We're going to talk about the amateur debuts specifically. Talon Carvalho, Paris Hawkins, Dominic Vidro, as well as Grayson Johnson, all splashed onto the scene in a huge way. The winner of this category is going to be the Pit SLC's Talon Carvalho. A close runner-up was that standout performance by Paris Hawkins as well. Zach, your thoughts on debut of the year?
Talon got it for me. Because what he's done since, right? But also, if it's all just their singular debut fights, Talon got it for me because he took that fight on short notice. He'd only been training like 3 to 4 months. And Ramsey was like, dude, you just he's ready. Like, I've never put somebody in there this early into training. He's just ready. Watch, he's an animal. And he was a freaking animal, dude.
Yeah, Jason, and he would go on to win 2 more fights, I should say, this year. He has been unbelievable. Maybe an amateur fighter of the year contender as well.
Everybody is everybody wants to be what Talon Carvalho is. When I get other fighters, they're like, I want to fight for a title. I want to do this. I want to do that. And, and no disrespect to any of them. All of them are making these plans of what they want to do and what they're going to do and this and that. Talon just says, I want to be on this card. Just line it up. And gosh, it's such a learning point. He said it's time for a belt. And we had a conversation because I'd already offered the title fight with Matt Lawson to somebody else. And he said, rather than saying, okay, I'll wait for the winner of that, he said, cool, get me a fight in the meantime. I just want to stay active. Like, be that guy. Be that guy.
Jason, your thoughts on Talon Carvalho?
I obviously, Talon was my first, but I mean, you could say Talon 1A, Paris 1B, Dom 1C. Like, I cannot think of 3 debut fighters that had epic post-fight interviews. All 3 of those guys were great on the mic after their fights. They all promoted themselves. They were all full of energy. They all had, like I said, mentioned with Jackson DeGray, they all had a little bit of swagger about them. Like the up-and-coming amateurs in the state of Utah, watch out.
Zach, your thoughts on just the debut scene, the up-and-coming scene, and what you have built this year within Fierce Fighting Championship. There's just a lot of new names, and they just seem to keep getting better, and we make sure to mention it every single broadcast.
I mean, that's not me. That's the talent pool. That's the coaches. That's the gyms across the state that are bringing these guys, the leveling up of MMA in Utah across the board, all across all the shows in Utah, everywhere. You just never know where the next superstar is going to come from. And we got a nice handful that are fighting at Fierce and fighting in other places too. It's fun.
All right. We are going to move over to our section of Fighters of the Year. We're going to kick things off with the Amateur Female Fighter of the Year, and this was a clean sweep. Our nominations were Amy Moreno, Mina Yushirawadi, as well as Melody Schrock. Melody Schrock getting the clean sweep, and I think that has to do more so not just the wins, but also the activity throughout. She has more fights and more wins than Amy Moreno, Zach.
Slam dunk, 3 wins, 3 finishes, got a belt, defending her belt soon. Slam dunk. Melody Schrock.
Jason, your thoughts on amateur female fighters this year?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Zach said, you go 3-0, you win a belt, you get 3 finishes. I think Amy Moreno definitely showed a lot of potential, and if we see her come back, next year, she could be on this award show at the end of next year if she keeps coming back.
Zach, sorry, I think I cut you off there. I apologize.
It's just. I think the other girls are all worthy. Like, we love them all. Like, we love Mina, we love Hannah, we love Amy, congratulations all Nicole Fuga, she fought the toughest girls, Nicole, like strength of schedule. She had the toughest, right? All that. But, at the end of the day, it's just Melody. I should say that was the slam dunk for me of the whole list. And besides the College Steyerwalt Fight of the Year.
All right, we are going to move over to the Amateur Male Fighter of the Year. Nominations were Jackson DeGray, Andrew Mickelson, Ryder Campo, and Shaler Ladd. Andrew Mickelson, one of 2 fighters to defend their titles this year, and also gets the clean sweep out of Agema.
For me, Andrew Mickelson, Jackson DeGray, close second, but just the way Andrew Mickelson is just dominant, man. He comes in there, he's confident, he wins the title, he defends the title. Just all around great performance all year long from Andrew Mickelson. Didn't he get wasn't he on the Pat McAfee show this year, or was that the end of last year?
That was last year.
Yeah.
Was it last year? All right.
It was after the June show last year when he had that incredible knockout. Yeah.
Yeah.
But seriously, Zach, just an unreal 2023 for Andrew Mickelson. He just continues to defy all odds in terms of what you should be as an amateur fighter. His athleticism just continues to take him places, and his MMA game is growing as well. And
the other thing that people need to understand with Andrew too, nobody wanted to fight him. Chris Chu got a rematch because he'd been asking me for it and he was hounding me for it. But at the same time too, I kind of told Andrew, to be honest, if you want to fight on this card, you might have to fight Chris because nobody else wants to fight you, dude. Chris is the only person that wanted to fight him. To get him his win in April, that was hard to find him that guy. So yeah.
All right. Final category of the day, final category of the year, our professional male fighter of the year. And there were so many big ones, but these ones come to mind: Jerome Hatch, Carson Hardman, Mike Jones, all nominations, but the winner is going to be, and never a doubt, Kent Mafaleo as, sorry, the pro fighter of the year for Fierce Fighting Championship. Zach, I mean, he's been our pound for pound number one fighter throughout the entirety of the year, defends his title alongside Andrew Menkelson, a special talent with a bright 2024 ahead, it seems like.
Really, I mean, you want to talk about a defining moment? I mean, people could say whatever they want. We literally built a campaign around him being that Fierce is the land of the heavyweights around him, Zeke, Ben, all the heavyweights that have been fighting for us. But you know, Kent's the top dog right now, and he just is. A guy just didn't show up to fight him because he was sick, literally, because he goes, Kent's a dangerous fight, and if I'm not 100%, like, I can't beat him. I mean, say what you want about Darian Abbey, like, I think that carries a level of respect for Kent and what he brings to the table as well. He's not only violent and dominant, he's feared by other heavyweights. I wish I could be a little bit more open about it. The people that say no to Kent, it's unreal. I get heavyweights. I have undefeated heavyweights. I have a guy that's 9-3 and knocking on the door. Kent is too risky of a fight for them. They feel like they're close to a big show, and Kent's willing to fight anybody, and they're not willing to come in and fight him. If that doesn't make you the alpha male, the top dog, whatever. I mean, he needed to have his moment on the mic in November to just say, hey, Dana or whoever, sign me, because people on the regional scene are starting to duck me now because they know they can't beat me. Or if they want to get in here with me, at the very least, they're going to get elbowed. Like, he's the guy. He's that guy. Kent Mafaleo is that guy.
Jason, your thoughts on Kent Mafaleo in 2023?
It's his house. Utah MMA, this is his house. Ken is one of those guys that we've watched, you know, early on in his career when I watched him fight in his amateur career. He's one of those guys that's always been, he's been that tough brawler. You know, he might have not won every fight, but he was in every fight. He was just a dog. And then you started to see something click over the last maybe 2 years, year and a half. Something clicked, and you saw his confidence start to raise. And he starts knocking people out. He starts getting better. He starts training. He's cross training in other gyms. He's training with other heavyweights, and he's just getting better and better. He wins the belt. He's got all this spotlight on him, and you think, oh, you know, maybe he's going to slack off. No, he just keeps getting better and better and better. I love the guy. I love what he does in the cage. I love what he does for the community outside the cage. You know, he's out with his sponsors. He's taking pictures with fans. You know, I never even introduced him to my daughter, and he goes up to the booth, takes a picture, and says, "Hey, your dad's cool," or something. And my daughter's like, "You know my dad?" She's like, he's just one of those guys that I think Zach will agree with me that we're Fierce is proud to have him to be the face of Utah MMA right now.
He certainly is. Faced some adversity back in June. On top of that January performance, we cannot wait to see him in 2024 again. And again, Kent Mafaleo, pound for pound number one fighter for Fierce Fighting Championship, also the face of it, I would say, Zach.
He is. He's the only other fighter that we have his silhouette on our t-shirts. Like, he's the guy. And we have a lot of guys coming up right behind him, but he's the guy.
Man, award show in the books. So many incredible performances, moments throughout 2023. Thank you both so much for joining me once again. Again, my favorite pair of guys possible to join me on a podcast. So I appreciate the time, fellas.
Hey, Blake, shout out to you and shout out to Zach for you guys putting together and just keep making this show better and better every show. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to call the fights. It's something that I never thought I was gonna do or even like, and I love it. And I can't thank you guys enough for giving me this opportunity.
Can't do it without you, man. Can't do it without you.
Yep.
I'm serious. I can't like.
Thank you, everybody.
Can't begin
Thank
to tell
you,
you.
our fans.
Love you guys.
2024 is going to be sick.
Cannot wait
Promise.
for it. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.